The complexities of generative AI, creativity or plagiarism. You have an idea for an image, something you want to create. Maybe you turn to one of the many generative AI tools now in vogue, like MidJourney, Stable Diffusion, or DALL-E 3. You type in a prompt, and within seconds, an impressive, seemingly original image appears. It feels like magic, doesn't it? But then the question creeps in, is this image truly yours? Or is it just borrowed, maybe even stolen from someone else? Since the release of DALL-E 2 in April 2022, debates about generative AI have intensified. At first, the discussions revolved around whether AI-generated creations could be considered art. Were they creative, or just impressive mimicry? Now, the conversation has shifted to thornier issues. Is generative AI offering users plagiarized content? And who owns the images it creates? Today, we're unpacking one of the most controversial questions in AI. Should generative AI be considered a source of plagiarism? To answer this, we need to break down how generative AI actually works. And, spoiler alert, it's a lot more complex than just copying and pasting. When we talk about generative AI, we're referring to systems that create text, images, audio, video, or even 3D models. These systems learn to generate content. And here's the first key point. The word learn is crucial. A common misconception is that AI just stores pieces of its training data, a sort of massive copy-paste database. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Let's make this easier to understand with an example. Imagine you're trying to figure out how much a pangolin weighs. Since not all pangolins weigh the same, you'd need to gather real-world data. You might weigh several pangolins and record the results, creating a dataset. Using this dataset, you could estimate an average pangolin weight, while also noting that weights tend to cluster around that average. This distribution of data gives you a model, a mathematical representation of the probabilities. With this model, you could predict a realistic weight for a new pangolin, even if you never weighed it directly. The model doesn't memorize individual weights. It learns the range and likelihoods. Generative AI works the same way. It doesn't copy specific data. It learns the distribution of patterns and uses that to generate new content. Now, scale this concept up to something more complex, like images. Images aren't just single data points. They're made up of millions of pixels, each with color and intensity values. Instead of learning a simple distribution, AI learns the relationships between millions of variables. Here's where things get really fascinating. Once the AI learns these distributions, it can generate new images that align with them. These images might look similar to the training data, but they're not identical. Instead, they're novel combinations of patterns, colors, and textures that fit the learned distribution. But let's address the elephant in the room. Can AI create something truly original? Critics argue that generative AI can only combine what it's been trained on. It can't invent new concepts. And to some extent, that's true. If you train an AI exclusively on pictures of cats, it will never generate a picture of a spaceship. However, AI has a fascinating ability to interpolate between concepts. Imagine training an AI on images of blue squares and pink circles. If you ask it to generate something between the two, it might produce a purple hexagon, something that wasn't in the training data, but emerges as a novel combination of learned patterns. This ability to blend and create is what allows generative AI to produce such strikingly unique outputs, like a flower made out of fried eggs or a landscape in the style of a famous artist. So, where does the controversy come in? The problem arises when the AI's output is too similar to specific pieces of training data. For example, if the AI generates a near-identical replica of a copyrighted image, that's a clear ethical and legal issue. How does this happen? It often boils down to two factors: overrepresentation and specificity. If a particular image or style is overrepresented in the training data, think of the Mona Lisa, it becomes heavily encoded in the AI's model. Pair that with a very specific prompt, like generate a portrait of a woman with a mysterious smile in the style of Leonardo da Vinci, and you might end up with something that looks suspiciously like the Mona Lisa. But here's the catch. This isn't the norm. Studies have shown that outright memorization and reproduction are rare in generative AI. When it does happen, it's often due to deliberate attempts to coax the model into recreating specific images. Still, these edge cases raise important ethical questions. If AI can be manipulated to reproduce copyrighted content, how do we ensure it's used responsibly? And how do we navigate the gray areas where inspiration ends and imitation begins? The debate extends beyond images. Take text, for example. Recently, the New York Times accused OpenAI of copying its articles. This leads us to another critical point. Language, like art, is infinitely complex. By narrowing a prompt, users can guide AI to specific regions of its learned distribution, sometimes to the point where it converges on a single recognizable output. But is this plagiarism? Or is it just a quirk of how generative AI operates? Legal battles are already underway to determine the answers. In the meantime, it's worth noting that AI doesn't operate in isolation. Human creativity drives how these tools are used. An artist who uses AI to generate a base image and then transforms it with their own skills is adding a layer of originality. Similarly, a writer who uses ChatGPT to brainstorm ideas or refine phrasing is collaborating with the AI, not merely replicating existing work. But as we embrace these tools, we must also address their limitations and potential misuses. One significant issue is the impact on copyright laws. If AI can learn the style of a particular artist or mimic a specific data set, how do we protect intellectual property? These questions are complex, and the answers aren't straightforward. What we do know is that generative AI is a tool, not a replacement for human creativity. Like any tool, it can be used responsibly or irresponsibly. The challenge lies in finding the balance, leveraging AI's incredible capabilities while respecting the rights of creators. As society grapples with these challenges, one thing is certain: generative AI is here to stay. Its ability to create, inspire, and innovate is reshaping industries, from art and design to writing and filmmaking. But with great power comes great responsibility. It's up to us to ensure that this technology serves as a force for good, fostering creativity while honoring the work of those who came before. What do you think? Is generative AI a revolutionary tool for artists and creators? Or is it a Pandora's box of ethical dilemmas? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Next time, we'll tackle another fascinating topic in the world of AI. Stay tuned.